Yo, what's up YouTube? Rowan here, your friendly neighborhood construction engineer. I'm usually on the road, tackling projects and deadlines, and this week is no different. My flight out of Hartsfield Jackson is at 7:21 a.m. tomorrow, meaning I gotta be up at 4 a.m. Yikes. But hey, gotta make those deadlines, right? Anyways, I left work early on Friday so I could get home to Veronica. Enjoy some quality time with the wife. I walk in, give a shout, Veronica. I'm home. But no answer. Her car's in the garage, so I figured she was upstairs. I head up, hear the shower running, and let's just say I didn't hesitate for a second before stripping down and joining her in the shower. She yelped at first, but then, let's just say things got pretty steamy. She whispered, "I bet you brought me a little something back." Huh? Don't keep me waiting. Even though I knew a hectic week was coming, I was totally in the moment. The warm water, the feeling of her in my arms, it was like time just stopped. But then I had to catch my breath, pull her out of the shower, and head to the bedroom. Well, let's just say the rest of the night was pretty epic. My work trip was, as usual, a total whirlwind. I was stuck in Baton Rouge dealing with issues all day Tuesday and most of Wednesday. On my way back to Atlanta, I made a detour to New Orleans to help out Mary Jo with her project. She's on maternity leave, poor thing. Everything went smoothly, and I finally got back to Atlanta on Thursday afternoon, exhausted but relieved. I walked into the office, ready to wrap up a few things. I was about to call Veronica and tell her I'd be home early when Titus walked in. He's my best friend since 3rd grade, and now we work together. He looked off. "How was your trip, Rowan?" he asked, sounding hesitant. "Long, but productive," I said, trying to stay upbeat. "Strickland's giving me the rest of the day off, so I'm heading out. I'm gonna grab some flowers for Veronica and spoil her with a nice dinner." Titus cut me off, his voice low. "It's not about work, Rowan. I need to tell you something about Veronica. She's been seeing someone else while you were gone." My heart sank like 1,000 needles stabbing me at once. "What? Veronica?" I tried to push the thought out of my head. "You're kidding, right? You think this is funny?" Titus didn't laugh. He looked genuinely distressed. "I wish it was a joke. I didn't want to believe it, Rowan. But Jake told me, and then Clay did too, a friend of Veronica's. They said that Veronica's been cheating on you, not just once, but with multiple people." Titus's words were like daggers. It was unbelievable. Veronica, the woman I loved, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I'd planned a future with. We'd shared everything, our pasts, even her wild college days. Veronica had always been committed to building a stable future together. Now this. Rage flooded me, swirling inside me like a hurricane. I glared at Titus. "You think telling me this is helping? A real friend wouldn't do this. If you're still my friend, get out of my office now." Titus hesitated. "I wouldn't do this, Rowan. We've been friends for so long, and you know I'd never want to hurt you. But I really think this is something you need to know, even if it hurts. You know me, Rowan. I know you enough to know you'd react like this. You've always been hot-headed. How many times did I have to pull you out of trouble back in high school?" His voice wavered a little, but he pressed on. "Rowan, I wouldn't tell you any of this, if I didn't think it was true. I'm going, but here, this is the name of the private investigator my cousin hired when he suspected his wife was cheating. This woman is good. If she tells you Veronica's cheating, you know it's the truth." He held out a piece of paper, his face full of sorrow. In my simmering anger, I just stared at it, not reaching for it. My mind was a battleground between fury and a crushing sense of helplessness. I took a deep breath, holding it for a long moment, hoping to cool the fire in my head. Whether it worked or not, it gave me a brief window to pre-think. Titus wasn't wrong, I had to admit. We'd been buddies since his family moved in down the street. We were both overachievers. I graduated top of our high school in a small town in North Georgia, only behind him. But while Titus was the studious, calm one, always avoiding trouble, I was the fiery one, always ready to fight. And Titus had pulled me out of more scrapes than I could count. Even though I knew Titus meant well, part of me couldn't forgive him for bringing me this information. I calmed down a bit and asked, cautiously, "Your cousin's wife? Was she really cheating?" Titus nodded, his voice shaky. "Yeah, and Mez. Hightower found out about it." "What happened after that?" He grimaced. "He divorced her. but they still have to see each other twice a week for the kids. He loves his kids. He'd do anything for them. Best thing too, 'cause he hates her so much he'd probably try to do something crazy if he wasn't thinking of the kids. With that, Titus stood up and left my office, closing the door behind him. I sat there, staring at the paper Titus left on my desk. His words were echoing in my head like a hammer pounding on my reason. In that moment, I felt for his cousin, who'd been betrayed by the woman he trusted, and I felt for the innocent kids caught in the middle of this mess. Titus's offer made me think about me and Veronica. We were talking about having kids, even had names picked out for a boy and girl. A sliver of doubt crept into my mind, an unwelcome question about whether I really knew the woman I'd chosen as my wife. I tried to push the thought away, sitting back and staring at the door for a long moment. I pulled myself together, cleaned up my desk, and got up to leave. I was on my way home, telling myself I would forget everything Titus had said. But like a seed, his words kept nagging at the back of my mind. When I got home, Veronica was there, beaming at me, arms open wide. "You're home early," she exclaimed, and her lips met mine. I held her close, savoring the closeness of our bodies, that sense of security I'd craved all week. We didn't say much, but her presence calmed me. "Just the two of us in the kitchen," Veronica whispered. "I knew you'd be home early, so I got everything ready for you. Oh, I missed you so much, Rowan." She pulled me in tight, her eyes sparkling with joy. She was still my Veronica, the woman full of love and excitement for life. And even though Titus's doubts were lingering, I told myself I wouldn't let those rumors ruin my happiness. "I thought you'd be home early, so I worked late 2 nights in a row to get ready for you," Veronica said, smiling brightly, her eyes shining with happiness. "Oh, I missed you so much, Rowan." She pulled me close, giving me a soft, then suddenly passionate kiss. She pushed me back against the kitchen counter, the sound of the belt buckle clicking as Veronica quickly unbuckled it. Before I knew it, our clothes were scattered on the floor, and I was swept up in a moment that couldn't be interrupted. She nurtured me, and I was completely lost in the sweet happiness of it all. I wanted to be with her, to feel the warmth of Veronica's arms. Gently lifting her face, I smiled back at that radiant gaze, pulling her up to hold her close. After that incredible moment, we leaned against each other, laughing, her arms still around me. I felt my heart ease, the doubt Titus had planted seeming so distant and pointless. Veronica loved me, that much was certain. The crazy story Titus heard from his friend, whoever they were, was just a silly dream. I pushed it all away, allowing myself to be consumed by the evening I had longed to return to. As I drove to work on Friday morning, the memory of Titus's words kept circling in my mind. A part of me didn't want to think about it anymore, but the haunting nature of his story kept me uneasy. I told myself the best way to prove it wrong was to prove it wrong. That's when I remembered the private investigator Titus had mentioned. I could clear things up that way, put an end to these stupid rumors. On Friday morning, I called Donna Hightower's private investigation office and scheduled an appointment for Monday afternoon. It was a small office in Midtown, and I got there a little early just to brace myself. At 2 p.m., the receptionist brought me to a small conference room where I met Donna Hightower, the renowned investigator. She was tall and serious, wearing a sharp black suit. She seemed sharp, from her eyes to her demeanor, each word measured but conveying an air of trust. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jarrow," she greeted me with a firm handshake. "Welcome to Hightower Investigative Services. I'm Donna Hightower. What can we do for you?" I swallowed the knot in my throat and said, "Hi, Ms. Hightower. I'm Rowan Jarrow. Thank you for seeing me." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. My situation's pretty simple, or at least I think it is. I travel a lot for work, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and someone's been spreading rumors that my wife, Veronica, is cheating on me. I paused, making sure my voice didn't waver, and continued. "I want you to investigate and prove that Veronica's not doing that she's completely faithful." Ms. Hightower sat silently, listening intently to every word I said, then asking very detailed questions about Veronica, our relationship, and the rumors. She took notes meticulously but didn't show any emotion, just focusing as if analyzing every tiny detail. After I finished, she said, "Thank you for sharing the details, Mr. Jarrow. I understand that you're a Georgia Tech graduate with a master's degree in engineering. Are you familiar with the concept of the burden of proof in philosophy and law?" I was surprised by the question, but I answered I took a basic philosophy class, and I've testified in a few cases involving the company, but I'm not an expert. She nodded, her gaze sharp. You're asking me to prove that your wife isn't having an affair. That's a difficult task, because proving a negative isn't always easy. I can tell you that over a period of surveillance, if nothing unusual occurs, then we can conclude there's no indication of infidelity. I listened, the reality hitting me with unexpected force. Miss Hightower continued, however, I can't prove that she didn't do anything in the past. Only when something happens can we report back, but proving that she's not doing it is impossible. I sighed, feeling a weight of disappointment. So this shadow of doubt will always be there. She pondered for a moment before answering, maybe. But with a period of surveillance, and no suspicious activity, it might give you some peace of mind. I'm willing to take on this case if you want, but I want you to know we can only look for current events, not guarantee about the past. Knowing my desire to clear Veronica's name and my faith in her love for me, I decided to hire Hightower Investigative Services to finally put these doubts to rest. All Saturday evening, after Veronica had gone to sleep, I spent a couple of hours going over the details with an investigator from Hightower's office. We carefully planned out the appropriate scenarios Donna mentioned, ensuring I'd know the truth if something happened. So, the rest of the week, I was stuck at the Atlanta office. On Sunday night, after church and brunch with a few friends, Veronica started complaining about how hot the house was. I went down to the basement to check the breaker box. Turns out the electrical system was fine, but it was my excuse to put the plan in motion. I fiddled with some stuff, then pretended to call the HVAC company. Hey, it's Rowan Giroux, we're having some issues with the AC, what's the earliest you can send someone out? I said loudly into the phone, loud enough for Veronica to hear. She came into the room, looking worried. It's too hot to sleep in here tonight, she said with a playful smile. Maybe we'll have to sleep in the living room. It'll be like a hotel night. That night, we cuddled up on the living room sofa, enjoying that closeness and intimacy. It only solidified my certainty about her love for me. Veronica loved me, no doubt about it. I told myself these rumors were just a bunch of BS. Monday morning, Veronica left for work, and I stayed home to wait for the AC guy. At 10 a.m. sharp, Donna Hightower's installer showed up, quickly setting up the small hidden cameras only she and I knew about. Every room had a motion-detecting device capable of capturing a wide area of activity, hard to notice. Once everything was in place, I felt a wave of relief. I paid for the service, confident this would be the evidence to squash these baseless rumors about Veronica. Tuesday afternoon, before heading out to Tampa and Orlando for work, I stopped by to say goodbye to Veronica. I'll be back late Friday night, if I can. I'll try to switch flights to get home sooner, I told her, genuinely looking forward to getting some definitive answers from the investigation. Veronica smiled, her eyes sparkling with affection as she took my hand and led me to the living room couch. In her arms, I felt everything I needed, a woman who genuinely loved me. But there were still those days apart, and the answer I wanted to be absolutely sure of, so I was determined to let this investigation clear my head completely. The work trip went well, wrapping up sooner than expected. On the flight home, I felt a wave of relief, excited to be back with Veronica. When I got home that night, she practically threw herself at me, smiling wide with happiness. All I wanted to do was sit next to her, enjoy a beer, and bask in the peaceful atmosphere I'd been craving all week. Later that night, Veronica and I were wrapped up in each other, her eyes full of love. I felt like she was mine, all mine. It washed away any lingering doubt, and I started thinking about Titus's accusations with the confidence that this was all just a big misunderstanding. Saturday, Veronica left to go for her workout, and I took care of the yard work. Coming inside to relax, I checked my inbox for any news on the investigation. Nothing. I told myself there was probably nothing there, but the unease lingered. Sunday afternoon, while Veronica was out shopping, I checked my inbox again and saw an email from Hightower Investigative Services. My heart pounded, a mixture of anxiety and hope as I opened it. Dear Mr. Giroux, your order will be ready Monday at 11 a.m. Please contact our office to arrange delivery. My heart still hammered in my chest as I quickly deleted the email, praying it was just a simple update. But the uneasy feeling came back in a flash. I remembered the scent of rosewater on Veronica's hair when she came home that afternoon, a fragrance I hadn't smelled before. Was it just a new perfume she tried at the store? Or was I just deluding myself to deny reality? I couldn't be sure. Monday morning, having confirmed the appointment, I headed to Donna Hightower's office. A few minutes before 11, the receptionist brought me to the same conference room from before. Donna greeted me, her expression as serious as ever. But this time a weight seemed to be hanging on her face. "Mr. Jarreau," she said. Gesturing to the chair in front of her, "We finished the investigation sooner than expected, and I'm afraid I have bad news." My heart dropped. She pushed a file folder towards me, not saying another word, waiting silently. The world seemed to collapse as I skipped over the beginning of the report and went straight to the photos. There, in front of me, were images I never thought I'd see: Veronica, my wife, in the arms of a strange man, right there in our bedroom. The next shot showed them in another position, still in the same room. Then I saw the third photo, taken in night mode, of her sitting on him in the backseat of a car, not the way a faithful wife should be. I flipped through the pages, each image following the last, and suddenly realized there were two different men. "Wait," I exclaimed, trying to catch my breath. "That guy in this picture isn't the first one. There are two of them." Donna nodded, her voice steady and empathetic. "I'm afraid it's all in the report. Over the last week, we documented your wife meeting with 3 different men, 4 encounters by the end of the week. And just yesterday afternoon, she met one of them at a private residence." I felt my breath catch. But she said she went shopping yesterday. It's true she stopped at the grocery store, but only after meeting the second man. You can check the receipts to verify. I shook my head, still unable to grasp it. But she said she was going to the gym on Saturday, right? Donna sighed softly. Based on the picture of her leaving a hotel with her second affair partner, she might have exercised, but certainly not at the gym. Listening to Donna's words, my anger surged like nothing I'd ever felt before. She'd let 3 different guys do this to me in a week, and not because I was neglectful or uncaring. "Mims," Hightower raised her hand, trying to calm my rage. "Mr. Jarreau, I'm not a therapist, but with my years of experience, I can say there's a possibility your wife is struggling with hypersexuality, used to be called nymphomania. She seems to be obsessed with the rush, like an addict, and keeps seeking it out, despite knowing the consequences." I remembered the strange scent from her hair on Sunday night, the sweet aroma that made me wonder. "She showered and washed her hair after meeting that guy yesterday," I muttered, realizing the details now fit what Donna was saying. "She might have, but that was just a quick cleanup to cover her tracks," Donna said, her voice maintaining a cold professional tone. "We observed that she was very careful about secrecy, changing the sheets often. That's how she wiped away all traces, avoiding any suspicion from you." Rage flared like a fire in my chest. "On our bed," I repeated, the pain of remembering Veronica sneaking around with others in our home hitting me hard. Donna nodded. "2 of the 3 nights you were away, Mr. Jarreau, she'd bring them." "Don't call them that. They're betrayers," I interrupted coldly. "All right," she continued, keeping her composure. "One of them, the second one, seems to be the one she's been seeing regularly. He's listed in the investigation, Jacob Wolliver, 32, also married. He might be your wife's supervisor at the company, but apparently he doesn't socialize with his family or anyone outside their relationship." My fist clenched, my anger reaching a point where I wanted to break everything. "Jacob, I know him. Veronica mentioned him as the new manager when Mrs. Allenby got promoted, but I never thought he'd be the one sneaking around with my wife." Donna shook her head, her eyes laced with a hint of sarcasm. "That's a good reason why you never met him. We've seen her meeting him at the hotel on Saturday, and at his house yesterday. If Mrs. Wolliver got home sooner, things might have been exposed." "I'm going to end this," I muttered, the fury still boiling inside me. I've lived a life of adventure and freedom, but eventually I realized what I needed wasn't a series of quick flings. I met Veronica when I was ready to settle down, to start a new life, to build a family. I believed her. I fought back the anger that felt like it would burn through my chest, but the thought of revenge kept creeping in. Donna Hightower sat quietly beside me, placing her hand on mine, her touch pulling me back to reality. "Mr. Jarreau, I understand this is a huge shock, and it's hard to accept, but I want to remind you about something. When betrayed, many people let their anger cloud their judgment, leading to decisions that can ruin their own lives. She looked straight into my eyes, her tone firm. You might want to seek revenge, but remember, if you go too far, you'll be the one who ultimately suffers. I squeezed my hand, the anger still churning but becoming more manageable. You're right, Miss Hightower, I understand. I won't lose my cool, but I'll make sure she understands the feeling she's caused me. Donna nodded, recognizing the determination in my eyes. Just make sure you don't let things get out of control. Before leaving her office, I got a referral to a renowned divorce attorney, Donald Godwin. I went to his office later that afternoon, carrying the entire investigation file. Donald Godwin was a calm and experienced middle-aged man. We called each other by our first names, chatted briefly before getting down to business. As I opened the file, Donald whistled long and low. Boy, I see why you're here. We'll put a plan together. He plugged my USB into his computer, thoroughly checked each file, and grinned in satisfaction at the thoroughness, as if Donna and him had been collaborating for decades. So, can we get this done by the start of next week? I asked, eager to get things moving. We can do that, but there'll be an extra charge for the expedited timeline, he replied, giving a knowing smile. No problem, as long as it's done. That Monday night when I got home, I kept my distance from Veronica. She seemed confused by my coldness, but when I claimed to be exhausted and under the weather, she didn't suspect anything. However, this lack of closeness made her more proactive, and I decided to play along so she wouldn't become suspicious. Every time Veronica tried to get close, images from Donna's files flooded my mind, but I stifled the disgust to avoid giving her any indication. When she offered me a towel, I only gave a weak smile, met her gaze with empty eyes, not letting her know what I had planned. Thursday afternoon, I called Titus. My voice was low, calm, as if I'd lost the energy to be angry. Titus, it's me, Rowan. I paused for a moment, trying to regain my composure before continuing. Listen, I owe you an apology. You were right. She betrayed me. Titus was silent for a long moment. Then he answered with a steady voice, though I knew he was heartbroken for me. You don't need to apologize. I understand. If you need anything, just say the word. I exhaled a sigh of relief. At least I still had a brother in my corner. Saturday morning, I visited my parents, saying I was going to help my dad with some chores. It gave me time to clear my head, prepare for the days ahead. When I called Veronica to tell her I'd be home late, her voice was a bit off, and it only strengthened my suspicions. Love you, I said, the words laced with irony, waiting for the day I'd be free from these lies. I hung up, knowing I was ready for what was coming, and this time, nothing could shake my resolve. Sunday afternoon, as soon as Veronica left the house, I received a message from Donald Godwin. I called him back immediately, and he confirmed everything was ready. According to the special arrangement, at 11 a.m. Monday, the process server would deliver the divorce papers to Veronica and message me when it was done. I quickly called in sick, leaving a note for Veronica saying it was a sudden work emergency and to call me at the office if needed. Then I drove to the office, spending the entire evening finalizing the last steps of my plan. Veronica called me twice that night. I told her I had to work late, and promised to make it up to her with a special night out the following day. It seemed to cheer her up, and when I hung up, she said I love you with affection. In my heart, I only thought, it's time for a change, sweetheart. And this change isn't going to be pretty. That night, when I got home late and climbed into bed, I looked at her for a while, telling myself this would be the last night. She slept soundly, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Monday morning, my plan almost went off the rails right from the start. Veronica decided to wake me up in a way she knew I couldn't refuse. As I realized her intention, I briefly thought about pushing her away and stopping her, but I knew letting things play out normally would be better. With a forced smile, I let her lead, reminding myself this was the last time. Her betrayal filled me with disgust, but I contained the feeling, telling myself don't go too far. When it was all over, I got out of bed feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Veronica didn't realize anything yet and just smiled contentedly as I left the room. After she left for work, I got started on the next part of my plan. I walked around the house, marking my personal items with bright-colored tape. Anything that was shared property, I would leave for her or donate. By 7:45, Titus arrived with the moving crew, and I left most of the work to him. While packing up, I saw Amy, our neighbor and Veronica's friend, looking curiously at the moving truck in front of our house. Before she could look inside, I walked over, smiling and lowering my voice. Shh, don't tell Veronica. I'm setting up a surprise for our upcoming anniversary. We need to get rid of the old stuff so the new stuff can move in tonight. 5 years of marriage, I wanted to do something special for her. Amy smiled, understanding, and went on her way. I knew the story would spread fast in the neighborhood, but before that happened, everything would be over. As the movers left, I tipped each of them generously, shook hands with Titus in thanks, and then drove to the bank, withdrawing half of our joint account and transferring it to a new one. By 10:45, I was in an office in Sandy Springs, opening my laptop and checking my shared email with Veronica. The plan was going according to schedule. At exactly 11 a.m. I received a message saying the process server had met with Veronica. A sense of satisfaction washed over me as I typed out a goodbye message I'd prepared in our shared family email. I had considered accessing her work email to send the message, but Donna's warnings and Godwin's advice about not going too far held me back. For now. The message went out to a few of our mutual friends and family members. It spread the rumor that something had happened between us, and I had filed for divorce as a result. 3 photos were included in the file instead of attachments, so they couldn't be deleted from the message. Veronica and Jacob's faces were clear in each picture. But again, to be careful about not going too far, the photos were carefully cropped and blurred, obscuring any sensitive details, but clearly showing what was happening and when, with timestamps. The second message, the message I really wanted to send, was still sitting unused on the flash drive. Ultimately, the message wasn't sent to Veronica or Jacob. No need to warn them about the storm coming. The message was ready and looked right, so I hit send. After confirming it had been sent correctly, I quickly logged out, closed the laptop, and placed it under the seat. My phone buzzed at 11:03. It was Veronica, so I took the call. Rowan, what the hell is going on? Divorce? Why? I thought we were happy. Did you find someone else? I chuckled at her franticness. You think we were happy? No, I think we were happy, until I found out what you were doing. Yeah, I know. Look on the back of the envelope, what I had my attorney put in the packet. I heard her swearing and lamenting over the phone, promising undying love like she'd done in front of God, the priest, and a whole bunch of our friends and family at the church, people who had wasted their time 5 years ago. Damn it, she screamed into the phone. Damn it, Rowan, no, it's not what it looks like. Really? It's not your boss's nasty Johnson in your mouth. I'm sure it was just an accident when you two were naked in our goddamn bedroom, and he just happened to be blowing his Johnson. No, Rowan, let me explain. No, Veronica. I don't think there's enough time in the world for you to explain this adequately. We're done. My lawyer's information is in that packet. If you need anything, contact him. I hung up while she was still talking, or more accurately, screaming into the phone. When she realized I was gone, she called back, so I just sent it to voicemail. She left a message, apparently a long one, and a text from her popped up a few minutes later. The voicemail was the same, denial and lies, so it got deleted, as did the text message and 3 subsequent text messages and voicemails in quick succession. Not wanting to listen to more crocodile tears, hear any more lies, excuses, or apologies, and certainly not any more promises since she'd already broken the ones that really mattered, I didn't listen to the new messages or read the text before deleting them. Then I blocked Veronica's number. Right after that, I called my father-in-law. Since Bob and Chisi were my friends as well as my in-laws, I didn't send a message to them either. Hey Bob, it's Rowan. Hate to call you at work like this, but this is important, and I think you need to hear it from me instead of someone else. And I'm going to do it now rather than later because things are about to get ugly. I thought I heard him swallow hard on the other end of the line. What's going on, son? Bob, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but because Veronica can't uphold her vows, I have to end our marriage. Rowan, no. I know my daughter's past, but she's changed. You can't be serious about this, holding something from so long ago against her. Bob, I would never do that, but she relapsed hard and recently. 2 weeks ago, while I was out of town, she went crazy. I have the locations, dates, and times to prove it, along with photos and even videos of some of them. I've been hurting since finding out about it, and I hate having to tell you, especially over the phone, but you need to know that this isn't something I'm doing because I want to, but because I can't trust her anymore, and I can't continue like this. So, I'm ending it now. The papers were filed this morning, and she's been served. No, I can't believe this. She promised she was past that phase. His voice sounded desperate, in complete denial. She promised all of us, Bob, but her promises don't seem to mean enough to her to keep them. If she had just been faithful to them, and to me, I'd have loved her forever. You know that. But now it's too late, and the love I had for her is gone, dried up and blown away. But I still love you and your wife, and I didn't want to hurt either of you, so I'm telling you directly instead of over email. My soon-to-be father-in-law expressed his deep sorrow over what his daughter had done to us as a couple, and to him and me as friends. With regret in both our voices, we said goodbye. I quickly called Chisi as well, but the call went to voicemail. I suspected Bob had put her on speed dial, so I left a brief message. It was 11:16 a.m. and I'd completed the only part of the plan I'd hesitated on. If I did this part, I was hurting someone I didn't know, someone who might not deserve it. But if I didn't, I might end up hurting myself even worse in the long run. So, I put on my sunglasses, a baseball cap, and attached a laminated ID badge with my photo to livery company that, as far as I knew, didn't exist, but had Titus's number on the back. He knew how to answer any unknown call between 11 and 11:30 a.m. as Sunshine process serving. I popped a piece of gum in my mouth and headed inside the building. I went up to the security desk, trying to maintain the most professional demeanor possible. Hey, TC Jero, from Sunshine Couriers and Process Serving. I have a special delivery for Ms. Sienna Wolliver. The guard looked up, his face turning serious. Deliveries need to be brought to the reception desk back in the lobby. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my confidence and imitating a tone from the movie Fletch. Oh, but the court requires photo ID confirmation and a signature from the recipient. If you'd like, we can make this a big deal where I have to run around town looking for her, making a hassle for both sides. The guard hesitated, then nodded. All right, what do you need to do? I just need to see Mrs. Wolliver in her company lobby, verify her ID, and get her signature. Just 5 minutes, no fuss, no muss. After a moment of deliberation, he agreed, handing me a visitor badge and keeping my driver's license. You'll get your license back after returning the badge, he said, his eyes warning. Got it, I nodded, heading toward the elevator, keeping my confidence up, despite 100 emotions churning inside me. 3rd floor. I reached the company reception desk, repeated my reason for being there, and after a moment's hesitation, the receptionist hit a button to call for Ms. Wolliver. While waiting, I threw away my gum and took off my hat, trying to prepare for this difficult encounter. Sienna Wolliver walked out, looking stunning with her tanned skin, dark brown hair, and deep brown eyes. She was a little confused as the receptionist pointed towards me, but she walked over anyway. Joan said you had something for me to sign, she said, her voice cautious. Actually, no signing, Miss Wolliver. I'm Rowan Jarrow. I'm here to give you this because I think it'll affect you. I lowered my voice, discreetly handing her a carefully edited photo, enough to avoid sensitive details but clear enough to see the truth. She looked at the picture, then shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. No, that must be fake. Jacob promised me. It's not fake, Miss Wolliver. I hired a private investigator to investigate my wife and found out she and your husband have been sneaking around. All the evidence, including photos and videos, are in this envelope. She blinked, her eyes red, clutching the photo. He promised it was just a one-time mistake. We were trying to make things work, but now, why again? I didn't know how to answer, so I just gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I don't have the answers, but this isn't just one moment of weakness. It happened multiple times, at prearranged locations. You'll see all the details of their encounters over the past 5 days in this envelope. Sienna was silent, her head bowed as she clutched my sleeve, as if a storm of emotions were sweeping over her. After a moment she looked up, tears gone but her eyes still full of pain. What's your name, sir? She asked, her voice trembling. Rowan Jarrow. I want to go somewhere more private to talk about this, and forget about all the pain. Maybe even take a picture, just me, to send to him. She said it in anger, but I realized it was just a way for her to try to escape the pain. Miss Wolliver, you're a beautiful woman, and I'm honored that you'd ask, but that's not the way to get revenge, and doing that will only leave you with regrets. Let the hurt pass and choose to live in a way you can be proud of, because the legal system can be very harsh with these things," I said, giving her a gentle hug, trying to help her see forward. My words seemed to help her regain her composure. She stepped back, nodding. "You're right. I gave him a chance, but this is the last time. I have to go to court. There's no other way." I included the contact information of the investigation firm and the attorney they recommended in this envelope. "If you want, contact them. They're very dedicated and can support you," I said, handing her the envelope filled with evidence. Sienna took the envelope, looked at me with gratitude, and turned to walk away. Before she left, she stopped, turned back, and said, "Mr. Jarrow, if I need more help or advice, can I call you?" "My number is inside the envelope," I replied to Sienna Wolver, leaving her with the details she might need. After that encounter, I spent a few days immersed in a new project in South Georgia, a timely distraction as the anxieties about whether I had contracted anything contagious pushed me further into fury with Veronica. The thought that she had recklessly risked that, all for a few temporary thrills, drove me crazy. But when the lab called with the negative results, I felt a wave of relief, spared from that danger at least. Meanwhile, Veronica kept trying to get in touch, leaving a whole bunch of messages. Every time I heard her voice, I deleted it immediately, but she wouldn't give up. Finally, on Friday morning when I got back to the office, I took out my phone's instructions to learn how to block a number. It only took a few minutes, and the problem was solved. Yet, when the weekend came, my parents told me they'd gotten messages from Veronica too. My mom was particularly upset, knowing that Veronica and I had been planning to have kids, and even pleaded with me to reconsider the divorce. But I just shook my head, showed her the evidence photo, enough for her to understand without any further explanation. Seeing the date on the photo, she covered her face and burst into tears, then sadly nodded, accepting the truth. The following Monday morning, while I was working, Andy Smith burst into my office looking frantic. "Rowan, Mary Jo Bolecki's water just broke. She's a few weeks early. What do we do?" Mary Jo's project was Andy's responsibility while she was on maternity leave. But now with this sudden situation, he didn't have time to finish his current project. After considering all our options, we went to our boss and suggested I take Mary Jo's project in New Orleans, allowing Andy time to complete his unfinished work. Later that day, I got the good news that Mary Jo and the twins were doing okay. Feeling relieved that everything was all right, I packed my bags to head to New Orleans early the next morning, leaving Veronica and the heavy past behind. I kept myself busy researching the project, meeting with contractors, and putting together a detailed plan for the next few weeks. On Friday, my team and I headed out for drinks, relaxing after a long week. That's when I got a call from Donald Godwin, my attorney back in Atlanta. "Veronica keeps calling, more frantic with every call. You sure you don't want to talk to her?" he joked. I laughed, picturing Donald fielding calls from her. "More than ever, Donald," I replied, knowing that my life was finally turning a new page. When I got back to the hotel, I had a message from an unknown number. It read, "Hello Rowan, my attorney filed the papers, and Jacob was served. Can we talk when you get a chance? Thanks, Sienna W." As I finished reading it, my phone rang. "Hi Rowan, thanks for getting back to my message," Sienna said in a soft voice. "It's good to hear from you, Sienna. How are you doing?" She hesitated, then replied, "Rough, but I'll get through it." Her voice trembled a little, a pain I understood all too well. "Sienna, even though it's rough, it will get better every day," I encouraged, sensing a slight shift in her tone. "Thanks, Rowan. I really appreciate you helping me stop and think before doing something foolish. You could have taken advantage of my state of mind, but you didn't. You helped me think and keep my self-respect. I'm so grateful for that. Sienna, we've both been through the same pain, and it wouldn't be good for either of us if we lost our heads. Things are more stable now, and I'm happy to hear you're being strong," I said, relieved to hear she was finding her own way. "Yeah, there's still a long way to go, but it's definitely better than it was." My work in New Orleans was going well, but Mr. Strickland kept me on a leash, constantly calling for remote supervision of the Baton Rouge project and consulting for other teams. Every day was like wading through the Louisiana bayou, up to my neck in never-ending problems. On top of that, my attorney Donald Godwin called one day with some news. "Rowan, Mrs. Jarrow filed a motion for the judge to order counseling. It means you'll have to meet with her in Atlanta for a few sessions. The judge might require you to appear, and if not, it'll be detrimental to your case." My blood boiled when I heard this. It was clear Veronica and her lawyer were using any tactic to drag the divorce out. But Donald had prepared me for this possibility. When we filed, we only attached minimal evidence of infidelity, I said. Maybe it's time to provide everything so the judge can see the real situation? Donald agreed. A week later, the judge dismissed Veronica's request for counseling, implying she might be better off seeking therapy for her sex addiction. While Veronica and her attorney continued to create obstacles, I tried to maintain a calm demeanor, silently hoping she wouldn't try to hire someone to follow me or do something dangerous. To be safe, I had Donald rework my will and change my life insurance beneficiaries, ensuring Veronica wouldn't get a dime if anything happened. Once Mary Jo and Ozzy's twins were stable and out of the hospital, I would often stop by for dinner and sometimes babysit so they could get some rest. But that first babysitting stint made me realize just how strong my desire to have children was, though after that night, I silently prayed that if I had kids, God would give me one at a time instead of twins like that. Surprisingly, Sienna Wolver and I stayed in touch with a few brief conversations, her calling to check in and find motivation to move on from her divorce without having to say it out loud. I was always careful to keep a respectful boundary. We both understood we were just fellow travelers, nothing more. As things settled for Sienna, her calls became less frequent, leaving us each to our own journeys. Meanwhile, I decided it was time for a new place to settle down. A realtor helped me find a house in Dunwoody, and thanks to the savings I'd built up before marrying Veronica, I could afford it easily. When Mary Jo finished her maternity leave and returned to work, I found myself ready to leave New Orleans, heading back to Atlanta with a few regrets. The biggest regret was no longer being able to see the twins I considered my godchildren. Every weekend would be missing those visits, and I would miss those kids. The second was the news that Mary Jo would be leaving the company to be a full-time homemaker, her husband having received a teaching position at Loyola. While sad, I promised to stay in touch if the company had another project in New Orleans. Finally, there was the ongoing battle with Veronica, which was dragging on longer than anyone expected. And even though Donald assured me that Judge Johnson was sick of this whole mess, I was losing my patience. When I got back to Atlanta, I moved into my new house, enjoying the sense of peace after all that time. The neighbors were friendly. Even a newly divorced woman, Ari, had dropped by with homemade brownies. She invited me to dinner sometime, but I politely declined, explaining that I was still going through a complicated situation, something she seemed to understand better than anyone else. Titus, my best friend, didn't understand that. Over lunch, right after I got back to Atlanta, he asked, "So when are you going to jump back into the dating pool?" "When the judge signs my divorce papers, and I'm sure none of my money is going to Veronica." He clicked his tongue. "That long? Say, how's the Wicked Witch doing these days?" "I don't know and I don't want to know." Titus narrowed his eyes, looking concerned. "But you know you're still owed something from her, right? A big something." I sat back, staring into the distance, then slowly nodded. "I know. And she'll understand that when the time is right. One piece at a time, Titus. When the time is right, everything will be clear." At the courthouse in early April, finally, both Veronica and I were called for Judge Johnson's final pronouncements. He seemed to have lost patience with Veronica's frivolous delays. I arrived a few minutes early, and was waiting for Donald when I saw Veronica turn the corner in the hallway, spot me, and walk over. "Rowan, it doesn't have to be this way," she said, her voice weak, as if she wanted to reconnect. I met her gaze, not faltering. "I know, Veronica, but you didn't keep our vows, and things can't be any other way." She took my hand, as if trying to hold on. "You went too far." "Don't deflect. Veronica, how far did you go while we were together? 3 times over the years, each time making up for missing your husband by getting into bed with someone else. And the last trip to Tampa and Orlando? You used my absence to make up with your boss and a few other strangers." Veronica's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, tears beginning to stream down her face. "But Rowan, you know how much I need it." I looked at her, my heart clenching for a moment before the memories flooded back, cold and stark. "I don't pull that crap on me. I even tried to help you when I bought you the most expensive vibrator to help you through when I was out of town, and you even said it was the best one yet." She looked around, seeing others watching, and lowered her voice. "Can't we talk about this privately somewhere?" I sighed, finding her final effort humorous. "No need, Veronica. We talked about this when we got married, and you promised you were done with that casual wandering. We should have had a stable family, but you broke that promise. It's over." Tears continued to roll down her face, but she had nothing else to say. I turned away and saw Donald arriving. No reason to continue this conversation I had been waiting so long to end. We entered the courtroom, ignoring her sniffling behind us. Judge Johnson, without hesitation, declared the divorce officially final. As the gavel slammed down, everything from the past 5 years dissolved like a passing breeze. Veronica, as if losing control, started pleading and crying, then angrily shouting insults. But I didn't stop. Donald and I walked out of the courtroom, leaving her rage behind. The very next day, Donald filed for a restraining order. With Veronica's public behavior, Judge Johnson approved it immediately. She was forced to stay away from me, and in that moment, I felt true freedom. A few weeks later, I tried dating AICHI, the newly divorced neighbor. While we enjoyed a few fun nights out, there didn't seem to be anything deep between us beyond temporary loneliness. We eventually settled into a friendly relationship, neither of us wanting to go any further. Gradually, I realized what I really craved wasn't a string of casual encounters, but a true partner in life. But each date felt flat, lacking any spark, making me nearly lose hope. In those moments, images of my family would appear, my parents, my sister and her little ones, and my mother's voice as she softly said, "You'll never find happiness if you're only busy with work." Then, one night in July, I received an unexpected message from Sienna Wolver. "Rowan, it's Sienna. Can you talk when you're free?" We hadn't seen each other in a long time, but the moment I read that message, I felt a glimmer of hope. I sent a message back and waited for her call. The phone buzzed almost immediately. "Hi Rowan, thanks for agreeing to talk." "Of course, Sienna. How are you doing?" She hesitated before answering, her voice soft. "I'm officially free. I wanted to thank you for helping me open my eyes to what was happening, giving me the strength to move through what seemed impossible." I was quiet for a moment, then softly replied, "Sienna, I just did what anyone else would have done. Don't think about it anymore, okay?" She chuckled softly, her voice gentle and sincere. "You don't know how inspiring you've been to me. Would you like to have dinner with me?" That night we met, and dinner flowed naturally. Sienna, with her genuine smile and gaze, seemed like a completely different person. She'd walked out of the darkness, and now she sat across from me, a strong and independent woman. As dinner wrapped up, Sienna looked at me and softly said, "Want to get out of here?" "I think I do," I replied without hesitation. She took my hand, and as we walked out of the restaurant, everything felt light and fresh. She pulled me close, kissing me softly on the lips. The whole night was a perfect harmony of love and passion, as if all those pent-up emotions finally burst forth. We moved slowly at first, savoring each soft touch. I ran my hand along her face, taking in those bright eyes and the determined happiness in her features. Sienna's breaths mingled with my heartbeat, getting faster, more intense as we reached our peak. Finally, her moans burst forth, pulling along my own wave of emotion, erasing everything but her. I collapsed next to her, our bodies intertwined, the warmth radiating through each beat. We both were silent for a while, letting our breathing return to a normal rhythm. Sienna looked at me, her eyes sparkling, reflecting a content happiness. "Oh, Rowan," she whispered, "I've been thinking about this since the first time we met. There's nothing better than what we just experienced. Everything went beyond what I ever imagined." Her sweet words made me feel like I was on top of the world. She wasn't just a beautiful woman, but the perfect complement to everything I had been missing in life. After that moment, we pulled apart for a minute, and she rolled out of bed towards the bathroom, her figure a beautiful silhouette in the soft lighting. All night, we were tangled up together, sharing countless passionate moments. The next morning, she slept soundly, her face serene, peaceful like an angel. The sunlight streamed through the room, illuminating every corner, and for the first time, I took a good look around her apartment. Clothes were scattered everywhere, a reminder of our hurried search for each other, and I couldn't help but laugh. "I understand how heartbroken you are," my sister said after I told her everything. "But think about it, one date doesn't tell the whole story. If you still feel something, you should try, because you'll never know unless you try." "Thanks, sis," I said. "You're right. But it'll hurt more if I get closer to her and then realize that the past between her and Jacob will always be a barrier." She nodded thoughtfully. "But little brother, how can you be sure if you don't try?" All the way back home and for days after, Her words kept swirling in my head. Titus, the only one who knew the whole story, seemed to agree with my decision to walk away. Though thinking about his own rocky romance, I questioned whether that advice was trustworthy. To get my mind off things, Titus set up a get-together with a bunch of our friends. We had a pretty good time, and after that night I didn't think about Sienna as much. After Veronica insisted on keeping the house during the divorce, I had Donald fight back hard. The result was that she wouldn't be able to afford to buy my share without giving up a lot of her other assets. I figured it was karma, considering the circumstances, and didn't feel bad about it at all. To avoid the worst-case scenario, I let Donald handle it for me. He discovered that Veronica was buying a condo, and there were rumors she was about to marry Jacob. I immediately called Donald because if Veronica remarried, the spousal support would be terminated. This time, Donald didn't hesitate. "I'll check into it and let you know. If it's true, we'll cut off support." I said sarcastically, "If it is, some people never learn their lesson." Donald chuckled. "That's right, and that's why I'm still in business." With the information about Veronica's upcoming marriage, I contacted Will Kleiner, my college buddy and Veronica's co-worker. Will and I met for lunch, and he said Jacob had transferred to a different department to avoid an HR issue. "Does your company have any policies on this?" I asked. "Absolutely. If they're caught, they'll be in big trouble." Will agreed to get me a copy of the company policy, and a few days later, I went to see Donald with the new information. Donald shook his head as he went over the documents and said, "Sorry, Rowan. Even though the company policy is strict, Georgia state law doesn't allow for lawsuits for emotional distress. If this case goes to court, it won't have any value." Even though I knew this couldn't be handled legally, I was still irritated. Donald saw that, chuckled, and told me not to give up hope. "First, let's deal with the spousal support." A few weeks later, Donald was ready. We filed a motion to terminate spousal support with proof that Veronica was getting married to Jacob. The judge approved it immediately, and that expense was officially off my list. With everything wrapped up, Donald sat down with me, saying now was the perfect time to investigate Jacob further. Based on his nature, I bet it's only a matter of time before he gets caught in another mess. It took 2 weeks, but Donna Hightower and her team confirmed Donald's suspicions. Jacob had already started an affair with another employee. Donald quietly collected the evidence and continued to plan without leaving any trace back to me. "Keep this absolutely under wraps, Rowan. If Jacob loses his job, Veronica might use that to try to reinstate support. Don't worry, I'm not leaving any loose ends. And if Jacob really does get caught, I'm sure he'll keep quiet about the reason why." Donald chuckled, patting me on the shoulder, and said, "Slick as a fox, Rowan, and I like it." That day, Donald's lawyer friend sent a special gift to Jacob's company. A few hours later, Will called me with an update that Jacob was escorted out of the building by security that very afternoon. Rumors spread fast that he was no longer welcome back at the company. Word was that Veronica cried when she heard the news, trying to find out why, but no one dared to say anything. "Take that, you jerk," I muttered after ending the call. I found a thrill in thinking about how everything had played out and chuckled, telling myself I was at risk of becoming a bitter old man, but it was a risk I was willing to take. A few hours later, I got a call from Sienna. She spoke quickly, her voice excited but with a hint of relief. "Rowan, I don't know if you still want to talk to me, but I had to call. Jacob contacted me last night, saying he was just laid off by the company, citing downsizing, and saying he'd be filing for a reduction in alimony. Then, I heard from a friend that he was actually fired, not laid off. And this morning I got a package of documents, anonymously, with clear proof of the real reason he was let go. I think I know who sent it, and I wanted to say a huge thank you." I couldn't help but chuckle. If someone could admit to it, they'd say no problem. "But Sienna, some people just never change, huh?" She chuckled on the other end of the line. "Right. Jacob is probably going to court and put on a big dramatic show about how he's so sorry. But when my lawyer files these documents, I'm sure the judge will just toss it right out. He just got remarried, and already he's cheating. Could he have been doing it while we were still together?" "Sienna, don't think about that anymore," I said, wanting to help her escape those old haunts. "The past is the past, don't dwell. Keep smiling and live for the present, you deserve that." After saying goodbye, I smiled. It was the first time in a long time I felt such peace. It was over. I fought the good fight, survived the dark days. Now, Veronica was in a small condo with her new husband, who was now unemployed, still paying alimony, and likely soon facing financial hardship. And on top of that, she was now stuck in a messy marriage with a husband who kept betraying her. I felt like I'd repaid the debt Veronica and Jacob had caused me. It brought a sense of true liberation. It had been so long since I wanted to think about them, and this freedom was sweet. That night, reflecting on everything that had happened, I knew I could no longer bury Sienna in the back of my mind. She was still there, as vivid in my thoughts as the day we met. Only when I dared to truly face her, leave the past behind, and move toward the future could I achieve true freedom. With a newfound determination, I dug up Sienna's number, hit call, and hoped she would pick up. A moment later she answered, her voice gentle but a little surprised. "Hi Sienna. It's Rowan Jarrow. Can we talk for a bit?" "Rowan, you helped me again recently when you didn't have to. I'm listening." Tonight, something occurred to me, a realization if you will, and if I'm not too late, and if you'll allow it, I want to talk to you about it to see if there's any chance I can create a change. There was silence on the line, though I thought I heard a breath, so I continued. "Even though I told you to forget the past, I realized I'd been so focused on the past and on what had happened to ruin my life, as I knew, that I couldn't see that I was looking at everything backward instead of forward. I want to beg your forgiveness for that, and if you'll consider it, I want a chance to try to make things right. If you'll allow me?" Again, she didn't stop me, so when I talked to her that night, I could almost hear Sienna nodding on the other end of the line as I realized it. I was relieved to learn she wasn't seeing anyone new, and surprisingly, she agreed to let us start over so we could see where it went, and if we could be as compatible over time as we were that first amazing night together. We had another first date the following weekend, with good intentions and the assurance to take things slowly. But sometimes things have their own ideas. She invited me in when I took her to her front door. She got out the glasses, and I poured the wine before we sat down on her sofa and talked until after 11. When I said it was getting late, we kissed goodbye, but the kiss didn't end as expected. The shift in my heart from affection to deep commitment was so clear. Sienna leaned against my chest, her eyes sparkling with joy as her hands stroked down my body, her gaze holding a secret twinkle. Looking deep into my eyes, she whispered, "Rowan, if you're not insistent on keeping things slow like we agreed before, I wouldn't mind if you wanted to take me to my bedroom." I laughed, scooped her up, walked upstairs, and gently placed her next to the bed. We slowly undressed each other, and when our bare skin met, an intensity surged through every nerve. Our kisses roamed to her neck, her shoulders, then stopped at the place where her heart lived. We mingled in passion, her moans becoming ragged, urgent. She arched, I thrust deeper, faster until I saw the radiant glow on her face as she peeked. It was impossible to contain myself any longer, and I joined Sienna in absolute release. Afterwards, we lay together in silence, our breaths becoming one. I felt hope in her eyes, a sense that this wasn't just a passing moment, and deep down, I knew I wanted that to be true as well. After a while, when we'd cleaned up and returned to the bed, Sienna turned her head to look at me, her eyes sparkling in the soft light. "Rowan, you don't have to go," she said softly. "I mean, if you want, you can stay here." I chuckled, leaned down, kissed her, and whispered, "I want to stay, I really do." Over the next few months, we had our share of challenges and frank conversations, but we both realized those little things didn't matter as much as the real feelings we had for each other. My feelings for Sienna grew with every encounter, and I realized my heart had fallen in love longer than I had even realized. A year later, we got married and started our new journey together. Little Molly was the flower girl at our wedding, scattering petals amidst cheers from family and friends. When Sienna and I said "I do," I truly felt our vows etched deep in my heart. Of course, sometimes the past would come back. The first time I saw Jacob after our wedding, he tried to smirk and say, "Getting a third wife? Huh?" I couldn't help but reply, just loud enough for him to hear. "Thanks for helping me get Sienna. She's worth more than anything you ever had," I said, not breaking eye contact with his bitter stare. And trust me, this time I got a better deal. Jacob's face flushed briefly with anger, but he was sober enough to stop there. Later, I heard that his marriage to Veronica hadn't lasted, and finally he realized that what I had said was true. We haven't heard from Jacob since. Only his regretful glances as he sees Sienna and me happy together, and that always makes me smile when I remember it. Since that day, little Molly is now 6, and she was at her grandparents' house as I stood beside Sienna in the delivery room. My hand clasped hers, we both took a deep breath, anticipation building. With a final push, Sienna leaned back, tired but filled with happiness. We heard the baby's first cry, and the doctor looked up, smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Giroux. Your baby boy is healthy." I leaned down, kissed Sienna's forehead, feeling a wave of happiness wash over me, knowing everything we had been through was worth this moment. Now, I wouldn't want to change a thing about our journey together.